My sister convinced my parents that I wrecked their lives, and they believed her without question. So I packed up and walked away without a word. This morning alone, I've already gotten 12 calls from them. Funny how the truth starts to matter only after you're gone. Before we delve in, tell me if you've ever been ignored by your own family. Share it in the comment. Drop a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Now, let's go. I never thought I'd become the villain in my own family story. But somehow, my sister spun that role for me with such ease that even our parents applauded her performance. I was the one who held the pieces together for years. I paid their mortgage when Dad lost his job, helped Mom through her medical bills quietly, and gave up on dreams I never told anyone about just to make sure we stayed afloat. But none of that mattered when my sister, Rachel, decided I was the problem. She told them I had poisoned the air in the house, that my presence was toxic, that everything bad started the day I moved back in temporarily after losing my job. And they believed her. It started subtly at first. A raised brow here, a snide comment there. I brushed it off. I thought maybe they were stressed, maybe Rachel was being misunderstood. But then it escalated. My mother stopped talking to me directly, sending messages through Rachel instead. My father started leaving the room when I entered. It was like living among ghosts, ones that hated me silently but viciously. One night, after dinner, Rachel said, "You know, ever since you came back, nothing has gone right for this family." She said it while chewing, like it was a harmless observation. My parents didn't defend me. They didn't even blink. That's when I knew the walls had caved in completely. I didn't argue. That was the part that shocked them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't bring up the bills I paid or the job I gave up to help. I just got up, went to my room, and packed. I left everything I had given them. The car I bought for Dad still in the driveway. The kitchen appliances Mom proudly used every day. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out and drove off. I remember checking the rearview mirror one last time as I pulled away. No one was watching. No one cared that I was gone. The silence that followed was louder than any shouting match could have been. I didn't hear from them for weeks. No texts. No calls. Not even a forwarded meme in the family group chat. Rachel had clearly won whatever twisted game she was playing, and I had disappeared like they wanted. But what they didn't expect, what none of them anticipated, was that life doesn't stay still just because they erased me. While they sat in their house built on borrowed money and self-deception, I rebuilt myself piece by piece. I moved to a new city, got a job in a firm that actually appreciated me, and for the first time in years, I slept without the weight of silent judgment pressing on my chest. Then, this morning happened. I woke up to 12 missed calls, 4 from Mom, 6 from Dad, 2 from Rachel. I didn't answer a single one. I just sat there, phone in hand, watching the screen light up like they had suddenly remembered I existed, that I mattered. But it wasn't guilt that made them call. I knew better. Something had gone wrong. Maybe Rachel's lies had finally backfired. Maybe they needed money again. Or maybe, just maybe, they realized the only one who ever truly stood by them was the person they pushed away. Me. I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me. I wasn't even bitter. I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's drama unfold from a safe distance. I made coffee. I sat by my window. I read a book, all while the phone kept buzzing. I didn't owe them a response. Not after what they did. Not after what they said. I had carried their weight for too long, and now that I'd dropped it, I had no intention of picking it up again. The truth had a funny way of coming back around, and this time, I'd be watching from the sidelines. The phone finally stopped ringing just after noon. I watched the name Mom disappear from my screen for the 4th time that morning, and I let it vanish into the silence like all the others. No voicemails. No text explanations. Just repeated calls like I was some emergency contact and not the outcast they pushed into the shadows. A small part of me, the one that still remembered birthdays, that used to fold Mom's laundry when she was too tired to stand, wondered if maybe something was truly wrong. But the larger part, the one they forced me to grow when they turned on me, told me to stay still. That afternoon, I opened an old email account I hadn't used in over a year, the one I'd once linked to family subscriptions and delivery services. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe some subconscious pull to peek into a world I no longer belonged to. What I saw made me sit up. An eviction notice. Dated 3 days ago. Addressed to my parents' house. 3 months of unpaid mortgage, final warning. I stared at the screen for a long time. So that's why they were calling. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded, heart strangely calm. They weren't calling because they missed me. Not because they regretted what they did or finally saw through Rachel's games. They were calling because the walls were closing in, and I was the last person they thought might care enough to help. And once I would have emptied my savings, begged for a loan, done anything to save the house I grew up in, even if I wasn't welcome there anymore. But I had done that dance before. And this time, there was no music playing. Rachel had always been their golden child. She got the bigger bedroom, the louder praise, the softer expectations. I was the fixer, the filler, the one who made sure the lights stayed on while they clapped for her report card. She was charismatic, manipulative in a way that looked like charm to the blind. I didn't see it until we were adults. She could convince you it was raining while standing in the sun. And my parents? They never brought an umbrella. When I moved back in after losing my job, she saw her chance. She planted whispers, crafted stories, and twisted facts. I became the leech, the bitter failure dragging them all down. And they ate it up. The last conversation I had with my father was burned into memory. He didn't yell. That would have been too human. He simply said, "I think you've overstayed your welcome." That sentence sliced cleaner than any insult could have. I remember nodding, heart pounding, throat tight, then going upstairs to pack. And now here they were, calling like they hadn't once treated me like some mold they were glad to scrape off their perfect picture frame. 12 missed calls. 12 moments of realization that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the villain after all. I spent the rest of the day ignoring the tightness in my chest. It wasn't guilt, not quite. It was the residue of years spent trying to belong in a place that never really saw me. I went for a walk, let the city swallow me in its hum. I passed a bakery that smelled like Sundays at home, and for a split second, I was 10 again, watching Mom knead dough with flour on her cheek. I nearly cried right there on the street. Not because I missed them, but because they ruined something that could have been beautiful. That night, just as I was about to turn in, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message. From Rachel. I stared at her name for a long moment before opening it. It was short, cold, calculated. "I know you saw the calls. Don't be petty. We need your help." No apology. No admission of guilt. Just a command dressed as a favor. I laughed. Out loud. A full, tired laugh that echoed in my empty apartment. She still thought she could pull strings that no longer existed. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete the message. I wanted it there, like a trophy, proof that the game had turned. And as I lay in bed that night, I thought about the boy I used to be, the one who tried so hard to be good, to be useful, to be enough. He was gone now. In his place was someone stronger, someone quieter, someone who didn't need approval to feel whole. The phone buzzed once more. I didn't look. I turned off the light and let the darkness hug me. For once, I wasn't afraid of the silence. I had become it. 3 days passed. Not a single call. Not a single message. After the 12th call and Rachel's entitled text, they must have realized I wasn't going to play savior this time. The silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like a test. A tug of war I had once lost because I was too scared of being forgotten. But now I welcomed the quiet. I wore it like armor. Each moment without their voices was another stitch in the new life I was building. A life not patched together with guilt or obligation, but one tailored to my own worth. On the 4th day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out like the others. Minutes later, a voicemail appeared. I hovered over it for a long while. My thumb hovered, hesitated, then tapped. My father's voice came through. Low, tired, nothing like the man who once stood at the head of the dinner table, proud and unshaken. He cleared his throat before speaking. We made mistakes. Your mother and I. We didn't see things clearly. Maybe we still don't. But Rachel, she's gone. Just packed up and left yesterday. No word. Took what she could and vanished. The bank called this morning. They're locking the doors next week. I know I don't deserve to ask, but if there's anything you can do, just call back. The message ended. No pleading. No anger. Just exhaustion. And regret. But regret is a cheap currency when it comes this late. I sat there, motionless, My phone still in my hand like it was made of glass. Rachel had left? The golden child, the one they defended through every lie and manipulation? And now that their little sunbeam had disappeared with what little light was left, they turned to the shadow they once exiled. Me. I thought I'd feel vindicated. I thought hearing my father admit even a sliver of failure would feel like victory. But it didn't. It just felt empty. Like they had burned the bridge and were now sending smoke signals hoping I'd swim back across the ashes. I made myself a cup of coffee, even though I wasn't thirsty. I needed something warm in my hands, something solid, to remind me I was still real, still here, still standing on my own. Later that day, I got a second voicemail, this one from Mom. Her voice was softer, shakier, and there was something raw in her tone that I hadn't heard since I was a child. Maybe even since before Rachel turned her against me. I just want you to come home. Not for money. Not for help. Just come home. I miss you. I was wrong. We were wrong. It should have shattered me. It should have sent me rushing to pack a bag and drive straight to them. But instead, it made me remember all the nights I cried quietly under their roof, feeling like a guest in the house I grew up in. It reminded me of the birthday they forgot because Rachel had a work presentation. Of the job interview they didn't wish me luck for. Of the words they never said, "We're proud of you." That call came decades too late. Still, I found myself driving the next morning. Not home, but near it. I parked a few streets away and walked, hoodie up, head down. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The house stood there, smaller than I remembered, older now, tired. Just like the people inside. The windows were shut. The grass was overgrown. A foreclosure notice flapped against the doorframe. This was no longer the house I fought to save. It was already gone. I saw my mother standing in the kitchen through the side window. She looked thinner. Her shoulders were hunched. She was holding a mug but not drinking from it, just staring into it like it might show her something. My father appeared behind her, sat down without speaking. The silence between them was louder than anything, and I realized something right then. They didn't just lose me. They lost the version of themselves they liked the most, the version that looked better when I was around to blame. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I turned around and walked away. There was no satisfaction in seeing them broken. No triumph. Just truth. A truth I had waited too long to accept. Some people only reach for you when they're drowning, and they'll drag you under just to stay afloat. But I wasn't their life raft anymore. I was the current that had already moved on. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was haunted by guilt, but because walking past the house I once called home felt like visiting a grave. There was nothing left to grieve, yet I still lay awake, replaying the silence I saw in their eyes through the window. That house used to hold birthdays, laughter, the smell of cinnamon toast on Sunday mornings. Now it held nothing but the echo of arguments and the sting of regret. And still, part of me wondered if I had done the right thing by leaving without a word. The next day, I received an email. No subject line, just a short message from my father's old account. "We'll be out by next Friday. Not sure where we're going yet. Don't worry, no more calls. Just take care." It was short, cold, final, but also more honest than anything he'd ever said to me face to face. I stared at the words like they were some foreign language I had to translate. It was the first time he'd ever told me to take care. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. He wasn't asking for help anymore. He was surrendering. And maybe, in a twisted way, that was the closure I didn't know I needed. But the world has a way of testing you just when you think you've moved on. That evening, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Derek, my childhood neighbor. We were both picking up coffee, and he recognized me instantly. His grin faded when I told him I'd moved to the city. "Your folks doing okay?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I hesitated. "They're moving," I said finally. He nodded slowly. "Shame. That house used to be the heart of the street. Your mom's garden. Your dad fixing the gate for everyone. Rachel babysitting the Thompsons' kids." I didn't respond. I just smiled faintly and said goodbye. But inside, something cracked. The image the neighborhood had of us. A happy family, the helpful daughter, the strong father, the quiet son who always said yes, was just that. An image. Carefully posed. I realized I wasn't just grieving a house. I was grieving the illusion we'd all protected for too long. 2 nights later, I got a text from Rachel. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw her name. I opened it, expecting venom. Heard you showed up. They're too proud to say it, but they're waiting on you. Again. Typical. I read it twice. The tone hadn't changed. Still smug. Still manipulative. Still framing things as if I was the one with something to prove. I should have ignored it, blocked her, deleted her number. But instead, I responded. You left too. So don't pretend you stayed to clean up the mess. She replied in less than a minute. I didn't make the mess. You did. You always do. They just finally saw it. I locked my phone and tossed it across the room. The old anger boiled to the surface, not because of what she said, but because she still believed it. After everything, after abandoning them, after manipulating everyone, she still clung to the fantasy that I was the storm in our family. But storms pass. She was the rot that stayed. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to send, but to free myself from the words I hadn't spoken. I poured everything into it. The nights I stayed up fixing the Wi-Fi so Mom could watch her shows. The time I canceled a job interview to drive Dad to a dental appointment. The years I stayed silent just to keep the peace. And the moment I finally understood that peace built on silence isn't peace at all, it's slow self-erasure. When I finished writing, I folded the paper and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. That letter wasn't for them. It was for me. Proof that I had tried. That I had loved them enough to sacrifice, but loved myself enough to walk away when it became too heavy to carry. By the end of that week, the house was empty. I drove by one last time, not to see them, but to see the space they left behind. The curtains were gone. The porch light no longer blinked. The mailbox hung open like it had one last word to deliver and no one left to receive it. And just like that, the chapter closed. No grand apologies. No tearful reunions. Just silence, and my decision to honor it. It's strange how absence can make things feel heavier than presence ever did. For weeks after the house emptied, I found myself waking at odd hours, half expecting a message or a call I'd never answer. The silence had become a companion, a kind of background noise to my days. But then came something I wasn't prepared for: relief. Actual, undeniable relief. Like a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The house was gone. The burden was gone. And slowly, my anger began to fade. Not because I forgave them, but because I no longer needed their apology to feel whole. I started spending more time outdoors. Long walks through the city. Weekend hikes on forgotten trails. I stopped checking my phone as often. And I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head, those imaginary reunions where I'd finally say everything I'd bottled up for years. They were pointless now. There would be no reunion, no performance. I had turned the page, even if the story behind me was still smoldering. But the universe has a way of slipping reminders in through the cracks just when you think you've finally sealed them shut. One afternoon, as I sat at a park bench watching strangers feed ducks, I noticed a woman approaching cautiously. She wore a plain scarf around her neck, large sunglasses, and a nervous smile that wavered as she got closer. It was Rachel. Older, thinner, but still her. My pulse tightened. I hadn't seen her in nearly 4 months, not since she vanished from the house and dumped it all on our parents. I looked away, hoping she'd turn back. But she didn't. She sat down beside me like we were meeting for coffee and not years of unfinished war. I figured you'd be here, she said softly, folding her hands in her lap like a child preparing for scolding. I didn't answer. I kept my eyes on the pond, my jaw clenched. She let the silence hang for a moment before continuing. They're staying with an aunt in upstate. Last I heard, Dad's been sleeping on her couch. Mom's in her spare room. It's not great. I nodded once, but still said nothing. She sighed. I know what you think of me. You're not wrong. I was awful to you. I played them against you. And I let it spiral because it was easier to be their favorite than to be their equal. That last part caught me off guard. Not because it was true. I'd known that. But because she said it like a confession, not a justification. I turned to her for the first time. Her sunglasses covered her eyes, but her voice cracked just enough to show she wasn't here to win. She was here because the game was over. You hurt me, I said finally. Not just with lies, but with how easily you watched them discard me. Rachel nodded slowly, removing her glasses. Her eyes were red. I thought if they picked you, I'd disappear. I didn't realize that by pushing you out, I destroyed what little was holding us together. I came here to say, I'm sorry. And not because things went bad, but because I never deserved their trust more than you. I studied her. She wasn't the same woman who used to hold the remote like a crown, who smiled when I got blamed for things she did, who stood in the hallway as Dad told me to leave. She looked small now. Human. Fragile in a way I'd never seen her. I don't hate you, I said quietly. But I also don't need you. Not anymore. She gave a slow nod. I know. We sat there a while longer, the only sound being the rippling water and children laughing nearby. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for a second chance. She just stood up after a few minutes and said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" Then she walked away. And for the first time, I didn't feel like chasing anyone. I didn't feel like explaining myself. I just sat there, grounded in the calm. Rachel was right. I didn't need her. I didn't need them. I had learned to live with silence and turn it into peace. But that night, as I sat by my window drinking tea, I wondered whether I could live with forgiveness, not for them, but for me. Because holding on to the hurt had become its own weight. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to put that down too. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like a storm or a scream. It comes quietly, on a normal day, with no warning. For me, it came in the form of a letter. Not a dramatic, handwritten envelope with a wax seal, just a plain, folded sheet slipped into my mailbox with no return address. But I knew the handwriting immediately. My mother's. I stood at the door for a moment, unsure whether to open it. After everything, I wasn't sure I had anything left to hear. But curiosity has a way of unlocking things we thought we'd buried for good. I took it inside, sat down slowly, and unfolded the page. The first few lines were hesitant, full of false starts. Then the words steadied into something unexpected. We failed you. We didn't protect you, didn't see you, and worst of all, we believed someone else's version of you. Your father and I talk about it now in whispers, like maybe keeping it quiet will make it hurt less. But it doesn't. Nothing about it does. The house is gone. The silence is louder now. We miss you. Not just because we need help, but because the best parts of this family left when you did. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. From the deep ache of being seen too late. I folded the letter again and held it tightly, not sure what to do with the weight it suddenly placed back in my chest. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It isn't always loud. It's not always about reconciliation or reunion. Sometimes it's just letting go of the part of you that kept hoping they'd understand. I wasn't sure I could ever open that door again, but I was certain I no longer needed to. Over the next few weeks, life returned to its rhythm. Work, long walks, the occasional catch-up with friends who asked how I was doing and actually meant it. I laughed more. I slept deeper. I even started making plans again, real ones, not just survival maps. There was a new apartment I was eyeing. A gallery exhibit I wanted to attend. A cooking class I'd signed up for, just to try something I'd never done before. These were things I never thought I had the space to pursue when I was tangled up in their drama. Now, they were mine. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something nudged me to pick up. It was my father. His voice sounded older, more tired than the last time I heard it. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't stumble through apologies. He just said, "I heard Rachel came to see you." I confirmed she had. There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long. And then he said, "She told us what she said. And what you said back. You were right. We didn't protect you. And we don't deserve anything from you now. But I just wanted you to know, we're trying to be different. Even if it's too late." I didn't know what to say. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because there was nothing left to fight over. Nothing left to prove. The war had ended, and I didn't even realize it. I simply said, "I hope you do," and ended the call. No drama. No shouting. Just a simple truth, quietly spoken. A week later, I visited the edge of the old neighborhood. I didn't go near the house. I just stood at the park where Rachel had found me that day, staring at the pond that had mirrored so much of my past. This time, though, I didn't feel the weight. I didn't feel the shame or resentment or sorrow. I just felt light. Like I had finally released the last piece of myself that had clung to a home that never really loved me back. Forgiveness isn't about returning. It's about releasing. I didn't need their apology to heal. but I allowed myself to accept it, not for them, but for me. Because bitterness is a heavy thing to carry, and I had miles ahead of me I still wanted to walk. Alone, maybe, but stronger, clearer, whole. When I left the park that day, I didn't look back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to follow for more stories that remind us we are not alone in the quiet battles we fight, and that sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of strength.